So we take all our data and crunch it into that predictive analytical model. And that creates something that looks like this. We create one of these every year. This is a structural equation model. And it takes a whole bunch of different entities and draws those predictive pathways between them. So as we move from left to right here, we go from some of these inputs, activities like documentation or trunk-based development. Then that creates intermediate kinds of capabilities like our culture or like our practices relating to operations or security. And those yield outcomes we care about, like having greater team satisfaction, greater commercial performance, reduced burnout, other good things that we want to get out of it. So this can provide kind of a roadmap. If we want to get good outcomes, the data show us that it's more likely we're going to get them if we start with these kinds of capabilities. We take that analysis and we sum it up in a report every year called the State of DevOps Report. Again, the most recent is the 2022, and you can read it online for free, anytime, anywhere. But I also have 3 copies of the printed version. It's got this nice square binding, smooth matte finish. These are a nice addition to your bookshelf. These can be yours for free, but it's the first 3 people who come to me and tell me that they are going to read it and that they're going to share it, because the important thing is that we use this to inform conversations with each other. So if you tell me that you're going to do those, and if I believe you, you may have a copy. I would love to share them with you. So let's look at what we found. We've been doing this for several years now, and some things have come up year over year, and we call these our durable findings. So the first is we can measure software delivery. And in fact, we have found that there are 4 metrics that reliably predict our software delivery outcomes, the value that we deliver to the business. So these 4 metrics are a balance of throughput and stability. On the throughput side, there are 2 metrics that tell us how fast we're able to get code, get units of value to our users. The first is our deployment frequency. How often are we putting code out there? Is it once a year, once every 6 months, 10 times a day, right? Folks may remember that this whole DevOps movement started from a talk called 10 deploys a day at Flickr, I believe it was. I don't even, Flickr? What? That can't be right. Flickr was a big thing back at the time, but what has persisted is this idea of putting code out there quickly. People thought they were crazy. Now everyone knows they can do it. We're not all there yet, but we also have shown through our research that it's worth doing, not just to show off at a conference, but because it's good for your quality and good for your users. And that's related very much, obviously, to the lead time for changes. How long is it from the time code is committed to when it lands in prod and a user can use it? This is obviously good from a business standpoint, right? Your product manager or your product team comes up with an idea. We want to get this out to users. Well, the longer it waits, the more the world has drifted and the less apt that product idea probably is. So we want to get it out there quickly. We've also seen, and this is something that isn't actually documented in our work because I learned it from a team who's doing it privately, but there's data that shows that bit rot happens before your code even launches, right? The longer your code is waiting in the queue, waiting to go to CI, waiting to go to CD, waiting to go through your approval process, the more likely it's going to blow up in prod because of a bug. So we really do want to ship this stuff quickly. We want to move fast and break everything. No, strike that. We want to move fast and not break things, which is why these velocity metrics are balanced against stability metrics. And our stability metrics are, first off, the change fail rate. Of the times that we deploy, how often does it blow up in our faces and we say, oops? We may use slightly saltier language than that, but we know we have to fix it. And then in those cases, when we do have to fix it, how long does it take? Time to restore service, expressed usually as a median as opposed to a mean, but the point is it's fast, or we want it to be fast. So taken together, these form a construct that we call software delivery performance, and we've shown to be predictive of the outcomes we're looking for. Speaking of those outcomes, software delivery matters, right? Software delivery actually is important for the bottom line, important for the business. This is something that industry in general is still struggling to wake up to. A lot has happened in the last 10 years, but there's still a lot of questions like, well, why do I care how fast you're shipping software? Well, what our research shows us is that organizations that ship faster software and ship it more with better quality have better outcomes in the ways that people care about, in the way that your CEO cares about. in the way that your board of directors cares about, because software delivery performance predicts things like profitability, things like market share. It can even go so far as to predict stock prices to some degree. It also, at the same time, predicts better mental health for the people who make this stuff, reduced burnout, less pain of deployment, things like that. So this stuff really is good for the people in the organization and the customers beyond the organization. Now, moving backwards in time, if you will, we know we want these outcomes. We know that these metrics tell us something about how we're doing. How do we achieve that? Well, our model at DORA is not a maturity model. It's very deliberately not a maturity model. It's a capability model. And what that means is that everyone has a unique set of constraints. Everyone has a unique context. And in your context, your success is going to be gated by your bottlenecks, your constraints, which are going to be typically somewhere in these capabilities that we found. So these are the key capabilities, technical, cultural, and process, that predict those software delivery metrics. There's a catalog of them that you can find at dora.dev/capabilities. And for every one of these things, everything from change management to cultural things to security practices, you can find an article that talks about what it is, how to measure it, and how to get started. So this is my favorite part of our DORA website, and I recommend checking it out. We also found that culture matters. Culture is not just a nice to have. Culture is a very powerful driving force in our software delivery performance and the ultimate value that we provide to the organization. We use a model that's called the Westrum Cultural Typology. Anyone heard of Westrum? Okay, see some head nods. This actually started well outside of technology contexts. Ron Westrum was studying teams in contexts like delivery operating rooms, right? Surgical operating rooms. Contexts like air traffic safety, air traffic control rooms, contexts like nuclear power plants, right? So these aren't software, but there are contexts where there's a lot of information, where the outcomes are significant, right? A good outcome for a nuclear power plant and a bad outcome for a nuclear power plant are pretty different and have a meaning. And what his team looked at is they looked at the ways that information is absorbed into these contexts and how people communicate. And by asking people questions about that and applying their model, they identified 3 types. So the three types, there's a power-oriented type. This is the my way or the highway, where the boss really is focused on their personal needs and just acquiring as much power as they can. Then there's the rule-oriented or bureaucratic. Now, this is our model of how business works, right? You have rules. When there's new information, we want to try and route it to the appropriate place and kind of stash it away so that it can be dealt with. And then lastly, they identified a type called the generative type. And this is one where when new information comes, it's treated as an opportunity to investigate, to learn together. Bridging between roles is encouraged. This is the kind of organization where if I want to work with a colleague who happens to be on a different team, I don't have to go get permission from my boss, and my boss, it's okay if I book some time on their calendar. It's encouraged to just do that. And this is why this is a cultural thing, because it's about expectations. It's not necessarily about tools or policy. Now, you can probably tell by these names that there's one that we like the best. So the generative culture is the one that we have found in our work to be predictive of better outcomes for the business and better outcomes for us as humans. So we've replicated this work in our research about software delivery and found that this is true in software delivery contexts as well. One of the things you may notice in that generative culture is there's echoes of other kinds of cultural movements or discoveries that we've had in our industry, right? SRE, blameless culture, or a culture of psychological safety, which is something that we've talked a lot about lately. These are all reflective of that generative culture, and it is sometimes hard to achieve, but we find that it's worth it. Anyone can do it. So a lot of times we hear pushback from folks who are like, I'm in a regulated industry, this doesn't apply to me, or I'm not really in a technical context. Well, if you're making software, you're in a technical context. So any kind of runtime, any kind of industry, we've actually seen this everywhere. Anyone can do it, and these dynamics are present anywhere that someone's doing this kind of software development work. And I have personally some theories that it's true for just about any kind of knowledge work, frankly, but we've kept our scope into software development. But only you are you, It is not a maturity model. Your context is unique, and you need to find your focus. And you can use these tools to help start a conversation around where can we focus today to make an improvement. Putting it all together, we get something that looks like this. This is a new thing. So for DORA fans, this is the first time I've shown this in public. I'm a little nervous about it, but this is what we're calling the DORA core model. And what it does is it represents kind of a summation of all of those structural equation models, because every year things change a little bit. And so this gives us a chance to look at it as something that's a little more durable, and this represents kind of a summation of what we've learned. You can find this at dora.dev/core, and you'll be seeing more of this if you keep an eye on DORA. Another way to sum it up might be something like this. Stability reinforces velocity. These are not antagonists. These are mutually beneficial. But to do so, we need a culture of a context of generative culture, a context of technical excellence. These provide the substrate on which stability and velocity can be mutually reinforcing. And when we achieve that, when we spin up that flywheel, we get happy engineers and organizational success, which are also mutually reinforcing. So let's look at some emerging insights, some of the things that we haven't validated as thoroughly because we haven't been looking at them as long. So first off, we've looked at security recently over the last couple of years. And what we found is that the shifting left on security, it predicts software delivery performance. So shifting left means moving it earlier in our process, incorporating it into code reviews, incorporating it into coding, having software developers really be accountable for security. And what we find is that not only does it predict better security posture, it actually predicts better software delivery performance as well. So you get kind of a double benefit from focusing on security. However, there is a key integration point. If we want to move fast in a secure way and incorporate it early into our software development, we can't just say that. We actually do need tools. And in this case, what we need is CI. It kind of makes intuitive sense. CI, incorporating that automation into our code creation process, unlocks this power of security to be beneficial to our velocity. We've also been looking at reliability for the past few years. Originally, we started, when we launched it, we started talking about it as availability. And then in conversation with the SRE community, we realized we really should be calling it reliability, which is more than just availability. And we've seen its effects on these dynamics. And what we've seen with reliability is that you can have software delivery performance and you can have reliability. They actually move kind of orthogonally. A lot of the stuff we're talking about can benefit your software delivery performance or it can benefit your reliability. You don't necessarily get both. In some ways, I think this reinforces the classic divide between dev and ops. DevOps is about breaking down that silo and having people work together, but there remain different expertise, different disciplines, right? But what our finding has found, I call this a force multiplier. When you have high-performing software delivery and high-performing operations, you get stronger organizational outcomes as a result. So especially as we move towards the right on both of these disciplines, they really start to mutually reinforce, and you have this great up and to the right. I think it might be in this deck somewhere, and up and to the right, the kind of graph that everyone likes. Okay, so here's some of our surprises that we had starting last year. Now, remember, this is science, right? Science. Science can be messy. Science is about the unknown. Science is about asking questions where you don't necessarily know the answer. And you might get a different answer tomorrow than you got today. So we need to account for that. But I want to share with you some of the things that we've found recently that are surprising, that are maybe going to tell us more as we go forward. In our day-to-day practice, I recommend focusing on that core knowledge, the things that we've shown over and over. But here in a context like this, where we're talking and discovering together, let's look at some of these surprises and say, what's going on there? Is that an itch worth scratching? So the first thing that happened that was a surprise in our most recent study is that our clusters shifted. Clusters, what it means is we apply a cluster analysis on software delivery performance. And what we found is typically there's 4 clusters, which we have named low, medium, high, and elite. That held true for 3 years. Then you can see the size of the clusters moved around. But then in 2022, for whatever reason, we actually went back to 3 clusters. And you can see the medium cluster had a real big bloat. Any speculations on why that might be? What happened in the last couple of years that might cause sort of a regression to the mean? Yeah, we don't know for sure. Our method doesn't necessarily allow us to test that, but that's a reasonable speculation. COVID kind of pushed companies back towards the middle. We're definitely pursuing some of those lines of research this year. We're going to see what happens as we emerge from COVID. I also, quick sidebar that's not in my deck here because I love this finding. We found something related to COVID and culture. We found that as a result of COVID and working from home and the stressors of it, burnout went up. Sure. But what we also found is that teams that had a generative culture had a much lower rate of burnout. So in effect, I think what it shows us is that that culture, that generative culture, is an insulator against burnout. So we didn't really see COVID coming. We don't know what's next. There's going to be something else. But if we can create and nurture that generative culture, we're going to be in a better shape to survive whatever the next catastrophe might be, whether it's another pandemic or space aliens, hostile space aliens. Hopefully it'll be friendly space aliens. We talked a little about security and how it drives software delivery performance. And so what we found is not only does security help your software delivery performance, moving it left actually helps you move faster, but we found actually that it was really the most significant driver of that. It was the single conduit through which organizations achieve software delivery. So the only way to have really great software delivery performance was through shifting left on security. And this was a really pronounced finding in 2022. We haven't seen it exactly the same in other years, but we're definitely keeping an eye on that. This one was weird. Weird science, if you will. Trunk-based development has been one of our capabilities for years. You'll see it in the core model. Consistently, we found that trunk-based development predicts software delivery outcomes. And trunk-based development, what it means is that you're consistently merging back to main. You're not keeping a long-lived branch. You don't have like a branch for this release, a branch for next month's release, a branch for the following, and all of them moving through. Because we all know what happens when you do that. You get the merge. Super painful. And it's not just painful, it's bad for our performance. Prior to 2022, this was very clear. Last year, we actually found that trunk-based development had a negative impact on software delivery performance. And this one threw us for a loop, honestly. You'll find in the report, there's a section called surprises, and this is right at the top. This motivated us to create that section because we said, okay, we got to talk about this. This is weird. This year, we are very much continuing to explore this. We hope to have some more things to say about it this year about should we keep doing trunk-based development. So right now, don't stop. If you're doing trunk-based development, please keep doing it. I still believe that it is the best way to go. But some data is calling that into question, and we're going to continue to explore, and we will report back. Similar to the security one, a surprise that we found in 2022 is not just that reliability is a force multiplier, but the reliability is the essential unlocker of your software delivery performance, which is to say that an organization that has high software delivery performance may or may not have a prediction on outcomes like organizational outcomes and job satisfaction outcomes. But we found that if they had that high reliability, then they got that outcome. So you absolutely need reliability as a baseline. Again, a lot of times, God bless science, it reinforces our intuition. What this effectively is saying is that you can ship all the features you want through your pipeline, but if your system isn't reliable, if it doesn't consistently stay up for your users, no one cares and it doesn't matter. So we have the data to prove that. The last one that is a surprise that I love to share is this one, and it's about attitudes. We found that attitudes matter. So we looked at teams, kind of the psychographics of how do you feel about your work? And we found that teams that recognize the need to continuously improve have higher organizational performance than those that don't. Teams that feel like they got it set, they got it made, we're doing great, ready to sit back on their laurels, they're actually performing worse than the hungry ones, the ones that are still striving for that iterative improvement and worrying and wondering what's next. So I think this is the data's way of saying to us, sit down, be humble, and keep looking for ways to improve. What's next? More of the same, which is always different because so the State of DevOps Report 2023 will be out this fall. We are right in the middle of analytics right now and report writing, etc. we have a community that we launched just last year, the DORA community. So it's made up of folks who have maybe read the report, maybe are doing a little DORA metrics in their organization and want to go deeper, want to connect with each other. So if you're interested in connecting with fellow practitioners to explore this, asking questions like, okay, for our commit to prod time, when does the clock start? That is an ongoing and challenging question, and this is the place to have that debate. So you can check that out at dora.community. We're also having an in-person event for the first time ever as part of the DevOps Enterprise Summit. If folks aren't familiar, DevOps Enterprise Summit is run by Gene Kim, whose face I saw on that screen recently. So he runs it every year. It's in Las Vegas. It's big and kind of expensive, but if your company will pay for it, it's an awesome place to go. And we're going to have a community event day 0, starting at 9 a.m. in Las Vegas. So as far as I'm concerned, that means that we're still up from the night before, and we're going to have an event where we're bringing some speakers. The agenda's not set because it's not till October, but we'll definitely have some great speakers and just a chance for folks to get together in person with other people who are doing the DORA. And lastly, is your ideas here, right? We really want to hear from you. What are your hypotheses? How are you using this in your work? How can we help us collectively as an industry continue to evolve our understanding of our work? And that's what we do. We take a pause, and we ask, what do we do? Does it work? How might we do it better? And doing that together helps us all. So I encourage you to check out dora.dev, where you'll find all this stuff. You'll find our State of DevOps reports going back all the way to 2014. Even if you read the most recent, there's some great deep dives, particular topics that are different throughout the years. You'll find our quick check, which is a place where you can, in 5 minutes, you can assess your DevOps performance according to the 4 key metrics, as well as diving in on some of the capabilities. And you'll find other resources, including that capability catalog, which is my favorite part of the site. It's really a guidebook that says, these are the ways to improve your software delivery performance and how to get started. Most importantly, all of this, everything we do, I believe, is the means for starting a conversation. The real DevOps is the conversations we have, the empathy we build with each other. So I am really looking forward to chatting with folks afterwards. Tell me how much you're going to share the book, and I'll give one to you. And with that, my time is done. Thank you.